The day 6 ancient dragons bowed their heads was not before kings, nor knights, nor mighty wizards, but before a mud-stained stable boy who had never held a sword. In a single moment, the forgotten servant became the key to a destiny older than kingdoms and darker than the stars. What secret bloodline did he carry, and why did the dragons call him their speaker? Stay with me, because this tale will take you where legends are born. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Now let's jump into the story. Darren Hale was just 16, a boy with rough hands and a quiet spirit, working each day in the stables of the kingdom of Ravelorn. His world was filled with the smell of hay, the sound of horses, and the sharp voices of knights, who never bothered to learn his name. To them, he was only the boy who cleaned hooves and shoveled dirt. But to Darren, the stables were more than a prison. They were the only place he felt a sense of peace. He woke before sunrise each morning, pulling on patched clothes that smelled of earth and horses. While the nobles still slept in their golden chambers, Darren was already brushing down purebred warhorses, each worth more than he could imagine. He never complained. He kept his head down and did his work, even when commanders mocked him. "You missed a spot, boy," one knight sneered, kicking over a bucket of clean water so Darren would have to start again. The others laughed, their polished armor catching the light, while his hands stayed stained with mud. Darren swallowed his anger. Speaking back to them would only earn him punishment. The only person who ever spoke kindly to him was Lyra, the falconer's apprentice. She was his age, sharp-eyed and quick-tongued, never afraid to speak the truth. Her father trained the king's hunting birds, and she often stopped by the stables. "Ignore them," she whispered once, handing him a crust of bread. "They think they're better, but they were just born lucky." Her copper hair was always tied back in a braid, and her smile carried the spark of someone who refused to bow. That spring morning began like every other. Darren carried hay to the stalls, humming softly to the horses, while Lyra teased him about the dust on his face. But their talk grew quiet when she shared a rumor. "My father says scouts have spotted dragons in the northern mountains," Lyra said. Darren paused mid-step. "Dragons? But they've been gone for centuries." "That's why the castle is restless," she said. "The king has called his council. Everyone is preparing for something." Darren laughed nervously, shaking his head. Dragons were creatures of legend, woven into old tales and painted on royal crests. They were said to be older than kingdoms, older even than men themselves. To him, dragons belonged to stories, not the real world. By midday, the sky was bright and clear. Darren led a pair of horses out to the paddock, letting them stretch their legs. The stable workers chatted in the distance, while the guards patrolled lazily along the walls. Everything seemed ordinary until a strange shadow passed across the ground. At first, Darren thought it was a cloud, but when he looked up, his heart froze. A massive shape glided overhead, its wings stretching wider than the stables themselves. The air shifted with its movement, bending the grass as if pressed down by invisible hands. Its scales shimmered between green and blue, sparkling like water and stone all at once. "Get inside!" the stablemaster shouted, his voice breaking with fear. But before anyone could move, more shadows filled the sky. 1, 2, 3, then 6 colossal forms circled above the castle towers. The sunlight vanished as their wings blotted out the heavens. Bells rang, guards shouted, and nobles screamed as panic spread through the courtyard. Darren stood rooted to the spot. The horses reared, pulling at their leads, but he could not move. His chest tightened as he watched the largest dragon descend. Its scales gleamed copper, like molten fire turned to armor. The ground shook when it landed, crushing gardens that had taken years to grow. The other dragons landed too, forming a circle around the castle. Their bodies filled the courtyard with living walls of muscle, fire, and power. People fled in terror, scattering like leaves in the wind. But the copper dragon's gaze did not follow the nobles or the knights. Its golden eyes fixed on Darren. He wanted to run. Every part of him screamed to hide, to vanish into the stables and never come out again. Yet something held him in place. Something in the dragon's eyes felt old and knowing, like a mountain that had watched the world for ages. And then, without warning, the impossible happened. The dragons lowered their heads, not just one, but all 6 of them, bowing in unison toward the boy with mud on his hands and patches on his clothes. Gasps filled the courtyard. Guards stopped in their tracks. Even the king's soldiers lowered their weapons, unsure of what they were witnessing. Inside Darren's mind, a voice thundered, deep and heavy, like stone grinding against stone. "We have found you, speaker." He stumbled back, nearly falling to his knees. The voice was not sound. It was thought, pressed straight into his heart. Another voice followed, smoother, like wind across silver. "The bloodline endures." Darren clutched his chest, his breath ragged. What is happening?" he whispered. Soldiers shouted orders. Knights rushed forward, spears raised. And above them all, King Althar appeared on a balcony, his crown flashing in the dim light. "Ancient ones," the king called, his voice steady, though his eyes betrayed fear. "Why have you broken the pact and entered our lands?" But the dragons did not answer the king. Their eyes, their voices, their very presence remained fixed on Darren. He was no one, a stable boy, a servant. Yet in that moment, as the shadows of 6 dragons stretched over the castle, Darren realized his life would never be ordinary again. The courtyard remained frozen in silence after the dragons lowered their heads to the boy. Darren's ears rang with the echo of voices no one else could hear. The guards still pointed their weapons, unsure if they should attack or flee. The king's voice carried across the courtyard once again, sharp and commanding. "Bring the boy forward," King Althar ordered. 2 guards moved quickly, though their steps were hesitant as they approached Darren. They grabbed his arms and pulled him toward the royal balcony. He did not resist. His legs felt weak, as though he was walking in a dream that belonged to someone else. The copper dragon's eyes followed him, glowing with patient fire. Darren could still feel the voice inside his mind. It did not speak again, but its presence stayed heavy, like a hand resting on his shoulder. Inside the council chamber, the air was thick with tension. Nobles whispered, commanders stood with hands on sword hilts, and the king's advisors looked pale with fear. Darren was pushed forward until he stood before King Althar himself. The king was tall, his face stern and carved with years of rule. Beside him stood Master Orin, the old sage of the court, his white beard falling to his chest. The king narrowed his eyes at the boy. "You, why do these creatures bow to you? Speak." Darren opened his mouth, but the words stumbled out. I don't know, Your Majesty. They called me something. They called me Speaker." The chamber erupted into shouts. Nobles argued, commanders raised their voices, and the noise filled every corner of the hall. King Althar slammed his hand on the arm of his throne. Silence. All eyes turned to Master Orin. The old sage leaned on his staff, and spoke with a voice that trembled but carried weight. Long ago, before these kingdoms were built, there were men and women who could speak with dragons. They were called mediators, bridges between our kind and theirs. They kept the balance of peace. He paused, his gaze settling on Darren. Their bloodline was thought lost when the Mage Wars ended. It was said every last dragon speaker perished. Darren shook his head. That can't be me. My parents were no one. They were villagers. They died when I was 4. Before the king could respond, the copper dragon's voice thundered again inside his thoughts. This time it was stronger, urgent. They were not your blood. They cared for you, but you were hidden. Your true lineage was concealed, so you would survive. Darren gasped, speaking aloud without realizing it. ... The dragon says my parents weren't really my parents. Gasps rippled across the room. Commander Halvik, a broad man with cruel eyes, stepped forward and pointed a finger at Darren. Lies! He is just a stable boy, nothing more. But the copper dragon's gaze turned toward the hall windows, and every person inside felt the weight of its silent presence. Even those who could not hear its words shivered under its unseen power. Master Orin's eyes widened with recognition. Then the bloodline truly endures. This boy carries it. The king frowned, his voice low. And what does that mean for us? Darren's hands shook. His world, already broken once that day, was cracking further. He thought of the years spent in the stables, the laughter of nights, the cold of winter nights. Had all of it been a disguise to hide who he truly was? Lyra pushed her way forward from the edge of the chamber, her braid loose and her face flushed. He's not lying, she said. I was there. The dragons bowed to him. I saw it with my own eyes. The king studied her for a long moment before turning back to Darren. Then why have they come? What do they want? The answer came before Darren could speak. The dragons themselves provided it. The chamber shook as a roar split the sky outside. Everyone rushed to the windows. Above the courtyard, a 7th dragon descended. But this one was different. Its scales were not gleaming like jewels. They were black, darker than a starless night, and its wings seemed to bleed shadows into the air. The copper dragon lowered its head, and Darren felt the words burn in his mind. Kaelin, once our wisest, now consumed by the void. The black dragon landed with a crash, cracking the stone beneath its claws. Its eyes were empty, filled with a hunger that sent chills through every soul watching. Its voice slithered into Darren's thoughts, distorted and cruel. So small, little speaker. My master will be pleased when I bring him your... Darren stumbled back. His breath came quick and shallow. What are you? The black dragon's laugh was not only in his mind. It carried across the courtyard, a sound of rot and decay that even humans could hear. I am the beginning of your end. The void devours all. Dragons first, then your fragile kingdom. Guards rushed to their posts. Arrows were readied. Swords clanged. The king shouted for order, but fear spread like fire. The copper dragon's voice cut through the storm in Darren's head. Do not fear. You are the speaker. The bond calls to you. You must stand. Darren's knees trembled. He was no warrior. He had no weapon. He was just a boy who cleaned stables. But deep inside, beneath the fear, something stirred. Something that had been waiting all along. As the black dragon's wings spread, casting the hall in darkness, Darren realized the truth. He was not ordinary. He had never been ordinary. And now, the fate of both dragons and men rested in the blood that flowed in his veins. The black dragon's landing shattered the courtyard stones. Dust and broken rock burst upward, and soldiers stumbled as the ground quaked under its weight. Its wings folded like torn banners, and its breath poured out in waves that smelled of ash and decay. The people of Ravelorn had seen storms, fires, and wars, but nothing compared to this. The corrupted dragon, once known as Kalin, towered over men and beasts alike. Where the sunlight touched its scales, the light was swallowed whole, leaving behind only darkness. "Archers!" shouted Commander Helvik. "Loose your arrows." A storm of arrows flew from the castle walls, but they clattered harmlessly against the black scales. Some snapped, others burned into ash before they even landed. Kalin lifted its head and let out a roar so deep that windows shattered in nearby towers. The copper dragon leapt forward, planting itself between the corrupted beast and the boy. Sparks of fire danced across its scales as it growled low, a sound that shook the hearts of men but held no fear, only resolve. "Stay back!" the copper dragon's voice thundered in Darren's mind. "This fight is mine." But Darren could not stay back. His hands clenched as he watched soldiers scatter before the storm of wings and claws. Guards pushed civilians toward safety, yet panic drowned order. Lyra tried to reach him through the chaos, but the press of bodies carried her away. Kalin lunged, its jaws snapping at the copper dragon's neck. The two titans collided with the sound of breaking thunder. Claws raked across scales, teeth struck sparks against armor like hide. The ground cracked under their struggle, and every strike sent shockwaves through the courtyard. Black venom dripped from Kalin's fangs. Where it landed, stone hissed and melted. Even the banners hanging high above began to curl as the air filled with poisonous heat. "Fall back!" Master Orin shouted, dragging knights away from the battle. "To touch the corruption is to invite death." Darren stood frozen at the edge of the chaos, his heart pounding. Every instinct told him to run, to hide, to let warriors and wizards handle what no boy could face. But the copper dragon's voice echoed inside him, steady and calm. "We searched for you. We bow to you. You are not here by chance. You must awaken." Darren shook his head, his voice barely audible. "I don't know how." The copper dragon staggered as Kalin struck its side, leaving behind a spreading black stain where clean scales once shone. The sight tore at Darren. This creature, who had defended him without hesitation, was being consumed before his eyes. "There must be something I can do," he whispered. Master Orin grabbed his shoulder, pulling him away. "Boy, you are untrained. The power of the Draden Speaker is dangerous. Without knowledge, it could destroy you." Darren's eyes did not leave the battle. "And if I do nothing, it will destroy us all." Breaking free from the sage's grip, he ran forward into the courtyard. Soldiers shouted after him, but he didn't hear. The copper dragon stumbled, its breath coming in ragged bursts of fire. Kalin pressed its advantage, jaws snapping closer to its throat. "Stop!" Darren shouted, his voice shaking but loud. For a heartbeat, the black dragon paused. Its hateful eyes turned toward him. A voice like cracked stone clawed into his mind. "You cannot command me, little speaker. Your blood is weak. Your power is nothing." Darren's knees trembled, but he forced himself to hold the dragon's gaze. "Maybe, but I am still the dragon speaker, and you are still a dragon. You will hear me." As he spoke, something deep inside stirred. A warmth grew in his chest, flowing to his arms, burning into his hands. ... He lifted one trembling palm, and a thread of light flickered into existence. It shimmered like fire wrapped in silver. The black dragon flinched. Not much, but enough. Doubt flickered in its hollow gaze. The copper dragon's voice pressed into Darren's thoughts, stronger now. as if fed by his courage. Yes, that is the bond. You are awakening. Darren stepped closer, every muscle screaming to flee, yet his will pushed him forward. I am the dragon speaker, the bridge between worlds, and I say this fight ends. The light in his hand stretched outward, weaving into glowing strands that wrapped around the black dragon's snout. Kalen roared, thrashing, slamming its massive body into the courtyard walls. Stone cracked, towers shook, but the light held. Soldiers and nobles stared in disbelief. The boy who mucked their stables now stood in the heart of a storm, holding back the corruption with nothing but his voice and his will. The black dragon hissed into his mind again, its voice layered with many voices at once. You think this matters? I serve the void, and the void devours all. Your light is a spark, and sparks die. The strain ripped through Darren's body. Every breath felt heavy, every heartbeat a hammer against his ribs. But the sight of the copper dragon rising behind him gave him strength. They were not alone, they were together. The courtyard echoed with a clash of titans, the copper dragon lunging once more, its scales burning like sunrise, while the boy's light flared brighter. Kalen reeled, its wings beating wildly, and for the first time, the corrupted beast looked uncertain. Stand with me, Darren cried, his voice carrying beyond thought, beyond fear. Stand, and we will not fall. The copper dragon answered with a roar that split the sky. Light and fire joined, and the battle in the courtyard reached its storm. The courtyard was a storm of chaos. Towers shook with every strike. Flames licked the walls, and the air carried the stench of smoke and ash. The corrupted dragon Kalen thrashed against the glowing strands of light that bound its jaws, its wings hammering the sky with enough force to rattle every stone in Ravelorn. Darren stood in the center of it all, his hands raised, his body trembling with exhaustion. The light that flowed from him was not just a trick of magic. It was something older, deeper, a bond that tied him to the dragons themselves. Yet the weight of it nearly crushed him. His knees bent under the pressure, his breath coming ragged, but he refused to let go. The copper dragon stepped forward, battered and wounded, scales darkened where corruption had spread. Even so, its presence stood firm, its massive head lowered until its eye was level with Darren's. You are not alone, the voice rumbled in his mind. Our strength is yours, as yours is ours. Together, we endure. Darren nodded, sweat pouring down his face. Then stand with me. The copper dragon roared, a sound that cut through the clash of wings and stone. The other dragons circling above responded, their cries joining as one. They did not descend, for to touch Kalen risked the spread of the void, but their voices gave strength, like a chorus of thunder lending power to the boy below. Kalen lunged again, its blackened body tearing free of some of the glowing threads, its voice carved into Darren's mind, layered with venom and shadow. Your fire will fade. The void devours all. When you fall, there will be nothing left but silence. Darren staggered, but stood his ground. His voice broke at first, but then grew louder, steadier, carried by something more than his own will. I am not silence. I am the dragon speaker. I am the bridge between men and dragons, and you will not take this world. The light in his hands blazed brighter, weaving into a shield of brilliance that forced Kalen back. The black dragon shrieked, thrashing, clawing at the barrier. Its venom struck, but each strike met the glow and dissolved into sparks. Soldiers and nobles watched in awe from the walls. Moments ago, they had seen only a stable boy. Now they witnessed something greater, a figure standing tall in defiance of corruption, a boy reborn into legend before their very eyes. The copper dragon pressed forward with a roar, fire bursting from its throat. The flames did not strike Kalen directly, but mingled with the boy's light. Together, fire and light became something new, a blaze that seared through shadow and cut into the corrupted scales. Kalen reeled back, wings beating wildly. "This is not the end," its voice hissed. "My master waits in the void. He will devour you and all your kind." But Darren's power surged, his body glowing like the heart of a forge. The strain threatened to break him, yet he felt the bond deep. As if the spirits of dragons long gone lent him their strength. "Then let this be the beginning," he shouted. With one final cry, he thrust his hands forward. Light poured out in waves, engulfing Kalen. The black dragon roared, its body writhing against the torrent. Shadows peeled from its form, unraveling into the air like smoke caught in wind. For a moment, Darren glimpsed the dragon beneath the corruption, ancient eyes filled with sorrow. Then the darkness consumed it again, pulling Kalen back. With a shriek that shook the skies, the corrupted dragon leapt upward, wings tearing the air, and vanished into a storm of shadows beyond the clouds. Silence followed, broken only by the crackle of fire and the labored breaths of the copper dragon. Darren fell to one knee, his strength drained. The light around him faded, but the bond remained. He could still feel it, like a steady flame deep within his chest. The copper dragon lowered its head once more. "You have awakened, you. The blood of mediators flows strong within you. You are no longer hidden. You are chosen." The other dragons bowed again, their massive heads lowering in respect. The sight silenced every voice in the courtyard. Knights, nobles, and servants alike watched as the boy they had once ignored was honored by creatures of legend. Lyra broke through the crowd, her eyes wide with wonder. She knelt beside him, steadying his shaking hands. "You did it, Darren. You really did it." He shook his head weakly. "It was not just me. It was them. We stood together." Master Orin stepped forward, his ancient eyes glistening with something like hope. "A new chapter begins. The void has revealed itself, and the battle has only just begun. But today, Ravelorn has seen the return of the Dragon Speaker." Darren rose slowly, every muscle aching. Yet his gaze was steady, his heart stronger than it had ever been. He looked up at the dragons, at the people who stared at him, and at the horizon where shadows still lingered. He was no longer just a stable boy. He was the bridge between worlds, the voice of dragons, and the keeper of a destiny larger than himself. The story did not end with victory, but with a beginning. And as the copper dragon spoke once more in his mind, Darren understood that the path ahead would test him beyond measure. "The choice is yours now," the dragon said, "to carry the bond, to guard the balance, and to face what is coming. We will stand with you, but only you can decide." Darren took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on the broken sky. "Then I will not run. I will stand." And with that promise, the awakening of the Dragon Speaker marked the dawn of a legend that would never be forgotten.